And have we got some volume? Bobzilla?
Hiya.
How's it going?
Very good, very good.
Well, thanks for doing it. I never done a podcast before, unrehearsed, unscripted.
Totally.
And that's just basically the story of how I do live things and recordings, etc., etc. So,
What's the worst that can happen, eh?
well, we can have a conversation. So what we'll do, we'll have some tunes lined up, and then if all goes to hell, we'll use them as a bit of an interval.
Yeah.
Cool. What do you want to talk about?
Your questions that you sent me.
So why you? Why have I asked you to come? And while I'm dipping my toe into this, why have I asked you first? Well, the reason is the many levels that there is to you as an artist, really. So there's just such a depth to talk about. Every time we speak, there's like a phenomenal, well, like I say, depth there. Whether it be artistry, DJ, music, nightclubs, club nights, and your history is massive. And I think we could probably do 100 podcasts and not really do justice to what you've been up to all these years. So that's why. And also, you were recalling some situations where, we've met up in the past. And also when we were held the rule of 6, you came round and what time? What did we talk? Till midnight or something? Was it
for a long walk through the countryside?
Got chased by a horse.
Yeah.
And
I think it was a donkey, actually. But
well, it was a very big horse that we got chased by. It was definitely
Shire horse, maybe.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'll just fire into it. I'll put some questions together. I didn't want it to be too scripted, but start at the beginning, really. The first question that I put there probably a bit ridiculous. But I think what I probably want to know is what did get you into DJing? What started that spark in your world?
I don't actually think I wanted to be a DJ. I'd got like a growing vinyl addiction, which was costing me loads of money, and I thought that I've got to find a way out to get some money back for these records. What shall I do? Oh, that's right, DJ. So like I'd kind of I was just in with the Corner House at the time. I'd kind of started a job as a graphic designer for them, and they said, "Do you want a DJ?" So I said, "Yeah." Didn't know what I was doing. There was no like modern technology whatsoever, like fancy mixers or whatever. It was really primitive, and it was kind of quite an indie thing as well. So that's what I sort of started in. Just used to listen to bands, go and see bands, and then from there, there was like remixes on the other side of things, so that kind of took me in other directions, really. And then I realised I wasn't really into that kind of indie stuff. I was more into the eclectic side of things, from dance to Latin, all sorts of stuff, really, and then try and cobble it all together and make people enjoy it, which has been a task in itself, really. So, seen some angry faces in my time.
So let me get this straight. So you got into DJing through design. Is it just because people knew that you had a vinyl addiction?
No, I was the designer for the Corner House. So it was my first ever job after college. I started on the Monday when I finished college for Graham, and they didn't have DJs. They were quite sparse at the time.
Yeah.
And then I was into all sorts of stuff. I had like a cobbled together collection of about 2 hours worth of music. So I'd always end up playing the same record about 3 times. But people seem to like it, and then I kind of started getting more opportunities. When people, all you have to do is one good job, and then you get another one. And then I was like young and kind of very energetic at the time. I suppose I'm still energetic, but I'm not young anymore. But so I was kind of DJing, and then as I say, it snowballed, and then you got more opportunities, and people just started asking you to do things, really. So.
Crazy. So what sort of year is this in? Because Corner House, I'm not sure what year the Corner House opened.
We were talking about this yesterday, so it's got to be 98, maybe. 98, 99.
Was it? No, surely not.
What, earlier or later?
Earlier.
Maybe 96, I don't know. It was near when I finished college, which was, I don't know. I know it's been like 21 years, so I'm I walked past the Corner House, and I'm like, it's sentimental, kind of.
Is there anything there?
Not really. It's a bit of a state. I think someone's trying to break in and stuff like that.
You know what's really amazing there? Like, I didn't realise that our I mean, I obviously realised that over time as DJs in the local area, we're intertwined, but not actually that much, because kind of Corner House, a few years after it opened, was where I had what was a significant residency for me. So I didn't realise that was that your first gig then?
Yeah.
See, people like me have been putting in work for years to get to the Corner House.
I used to go around to my mate Janet's house, and there was a few of them living there, and they were all into kind of warpy electronica stuff.
Yeah.
And they'd just sit there getting drunk, and I'd put records on, and I quite enjoyed it. Yeah. And I'd watched loads of DJs, but I'd never felt confident enough to do it. Didn't have any decks or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then sort of, like you say, you dumped in front of a set of decks, and then it had a proper rubbish CD player with the number on. And you had to guess you had to know your records, basically. There was no flashing light when it's going to finish or warning or anything like that.
Yeah.
So you just started playing there, and then like I said, they were quite sporadic. They weren't once a week or anything. And the Corner House, it was quite an indie place at the time. So if you wanted house music or dance, you went to the Arena, Empire, or whatever, or the big clubs. Whereas the Corner House was really a bar, and at the time, I don't think it had a late license. It was 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
But yeah, just did that really, and then spent a couple of years it was indie stuff really, I think there was Brighton Beach at the Arena and club nights like that, and sort of, moddy stuff, and there was a lot of alternative Blazers, and the town was quite an indie town at the time, and house was a bit of a niche, even though it was popular.
Yeah.
So it was kind of that's what you fell into, and then I kind of, you know what I'm like, I get bored quite quickly, so I'm bored of this. Whereas dance music kept me on my toes, really, whatever form of dance music it was. So yeah, I
find that absolutely fascinating. No, it's a different angle, different perspective from the one that I came from. Do you know what I mean? So that's amazing, really. So Corner House then, back then, what did it even look like? Was it just the two front rooms?
Oh, it was class. It was a old wine cellars, Wessenfelder or something like that, a massive German name. And I remember it was Brian who had it, and in the back room there was the little office where me and Graham used to sit doing design. Robin was there, and Robin would run the bars. There's a few chefs, because he used to do a little bit of food. Mm-hmm. And then they started developing it and making more rooms, and they brought in this metal floor thing, and it got bigger and bigger. And then you were in the back. Yeah. That never existed. The back, you wouldn't go in the back because it was terrifying. It was like something off a horror film.
Yeah.
And it was,
I still have nightmares about it,
Oh, before it was done up.
Before it was done, yeah.
So I remember Dan, who's my best mate, really. Dan used to work there on the bar, and I remember he went to empty the bins, and a rat ran up his arm in the bottom, and he proper screamed. But it was out the back was crazy, because it was all railway tunnels. The further back you went, the smaller the railway tunnels got as it went up the road. And then next door you had New Groove, the record shop, which was that was one of the things that got me into dance music through Gibbo, I think. Gibbo sort of said, "Have you been next door?" And I'm like, "I don't know what it is."
Yeah.
And then it was Robin and... Can you remember who it was? Robin and...
forgive
me, lads. Yeah, forgive me, Grant. Sorry.
Yeah,
Grant. But I remember going in there, and they knew what I was, at this time, I was getting the kind of quite beats, kind of bass stuff, not so much hip-hop, more kind of breakbeat stuff. And he said, "Oh, do you want this record? It's like a tenner." And I was like, tenner, a lot of money that, mate. And it was a bootleg, and it had Fatboy Slim, Daft Punk, Cold Cut, and another record. It was like an absolute classic piece of vinyl.
An investment?
Oh, totally an investment. Totally illegal as well, so some dodgepots put it together in a warehouse. But it was phenomenal. Nobody had these tracks. It was pre-Shazam, pre-internet.
Yeah. Can you remember what the tracks were? Sorry to digress.
The Funk by Daft Punk.
Oh, well,
so he's saying to me, this band are class, and I didn't like it at the time. Thought it was rubbish. Going Out of My Head by Fatboy Slim. Say Kids, What Time Is It? Oh, and it had Hey Hey Can You Relate by DJ Mink, which is one of my favourite tracks ever.
Yeah.
I think it's quite big at the Hacienda, like a hip-hop track. And honestly, it's the best investment I've ever made, because nobody had this record. But you might have had the parts of it, but but yeah, it was, and you could get a real reaction at the time from records because nobody could find out what they were.
Yeah.
And I always remember some DJs put their hand across the top when you looked over the DJ
Yeah,
box.
yeah.
So I'm not
No
going to
train
mention.
spotting?
I'm not going to mention any names. It was one in particular.
No,
But,
don't.
no, I'm not. I need to talk to him this week. Yeah, so it was like keeping it under wraps because you had a bit of an edge.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, because I was on promo lists at the time, which I don't even think they exist anymore. You just get whammed a SoundCloud link,
Yeah.
and they'd send you vinyl through the post, and some of the records were like really gave you an edge.
Yeah.
Like I remember I got Wise Guys Ooh La La, and nobody had this record for months on it. It had like a 3-month lead on it, and it used to drive the place would go crackers.
Yeah.
Like it was fresh. It was kind of it wasn't the norm, which at the time was pretty much house, I think it was, or that kind of thing, and you were getting promos for free.
Yeah.
And you know it was good really. So
there was a bit of an element to that, wasn't there? As in, if you had a record back then, like now, you can probably safely assume, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, that everybody's got access to almost everything. There's a guy actually on my Facebook page, and every time I'm struggling to get hold of something that's quite rare, or sorry, I can't think of his name in a minute, and I want it for an upcoming gig or something, I literally just say I'm appealing out to Facebook. Has anyone got a digital version of this? And literally just drops into my email now. You know, it's just crazy. There's that like level of community, which is a good thing, but also it's that, you know, you really haven't had to do the work, you know, whereas back then, if you were a DJ and, you know, it's almost like you dug in the record shops, you know, you'd been digging, you'd found it, you'd paid for it. It was almost like a level of investment in a tune then, wasn't there? That
yeah, I it's funny about record shops. So I grew up in Sheffield, just on the outskirts of Sheffield. Used to go to Warp Records on a Saturday. So like Warp's now legendary, you know, from Aphex Twin, everything. But in the shop on Saturday, it was like, you remember, all I ever used to buy was In Spiral Carpets t-shirts because I daren't go to the counter. And behind the counter, I learned later on it was Chris Duckenfield, the DJ, used to work in the shop, and he had this phenomenal Stussy t-shirt on. But I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't know what these records are.
Yeah.
What's a white label?
There was something to overcome there, wasn't there?
Oh, this was the pinnacle,
The
of scary record shops.
I struggled in Fernley's and what was the other one on Parley Road?
Austin's,
yeah. I struggled in there to approach them. Didn't struggle in New Groove. Those were.
I started True Temper on Borough Road with Lackey.
Yeah.
And like lovely to go in and people chat. It was the experience of going in the record shop.
Yeah.
Sometimes I used to like Fernley's, but I used to feel daunted asking for a record to be put on because if I didn't buy it, I'd get a sense of peeved offness about it.
Well, there was money to be made in Fernley's. You were taking time.
Yeah, but I kind of miss it because I'd buy a lot of compilations which had introduced me to new stuff, all on vinyl. And I was saying the other day about I'd spend 60 quid on records and I'd get like, how much is that? About 2 inches thicker records, all promos, albums, whatever. And now you get probably about 2 records for 60 quid if they were like albums or whatever. So I send to, oh,
sorry.
See, it's definitely real.
Definitely lie.
Yeah, so I was, but the record shop thing to me was ace. So I started delving, go out to Stockton, sound it out, and I'd start a.
Let me just get the dog sorted. Keep talking, Bob, about Sound It Out.
Sound it out. So big shout to Tom and Stuart, really, who introduced me to loads of stuff. See you, dog. Yeah, so I'm trying to think because you'd go from record shop to record shop, picking up bits which would make your set effectively, and you'd be kind of putting it all together, and you'd do this on a week. And I remember, I don't know, one week I used to go to HMV every Monday when HMV was decent, and they had quite a good vinyl section instead of just posters and computers. So,
sorry, hold that thought. I went into HMV in Birmingham recently. And it was like going back 20 years. CDs, by the way.
Right.
Does people buy CDs?
No.
But it's full of vinyl, T-shirts. kind of merch and things like that.
Yeah, I went in the other day though, and they had like, I think it was
Where was this? Which one?
Newcastle, Eldon Square, and they had like Spice Girls on vinyl. Like, who buys Spice Girls on vinyl? And the vinyls nobody buys those kind of shops. People who go in won't buy vinyl unless it's on like jazzy coloured vinyl, gatefold, limited edition. And then it seems like they're buying it so it's got value rather than for the music that's in the package. So I didn't care what it looked like. It was what was on the record more.
We were more tricked to an inlay cover, weren't we? Really, and a white label or just some kind of.
I think if you got a sleeve, you were lucky. It was like a paper sleeve that I ripped after about 2 slots in the record box. Yeah. Then But yeah, it's like I say, it's changed. But I kind of think I don't want to be one of those nostalgia bores because there's a hell of a lot of exciting stuff at the minute. But back then there was something about not getting one out. Like I could, almost like an envy creation where it's in this film what I've got, and you'd be like, "Where'd you get that from?" Yeah. And we had that conversation before when I bumped into you in Leeds, and you'd got that. It was LK by Marky, I think it was, and I'm just like. I think it was on. You'd got it. You travelled a long way to get it. Put it that way, and it was sort of. I can remember like, oh, when did he get that? Gutted.
You were gutted, yeah.
Just absolutely wounded.
Mate, what I would have done if I'd have known, I was
didn't even play drum and bass. Mind that.
Yeah. If I'd have known, I'd have bought you a copy. I was permanently. I would phone people if I knew they liked records, because my weekends or my days off from the steel industry at the time consisted of, I'm going to have a pop to Manchester, I'm going to have a pop to Leeds or Newcastle and do some record shopping. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I did it. And if I got into, like, I don't know, whatever you call it, Flying or Eastern Bloc or Piccadilly, and there was something there that I knew that one of my pals would like, I'd literally be on, God knows what the mobile looked like then, I'd be on the brick saying, there's a few copies of this here, do you want it,
waving it about, trying to get signal.
And the worst thing was, I don't think I ever got the money back for them. I just handed the records over, so I was like an enthusiast that just bought people records when I was buzzing about it, because that was it, wasn't it? There was a massive buzz involved.
Did the favour ever come back though?
Probably. Yeah. I probably just didn't recognise it. And certainly not at the time when I was a young man. I would now, massively.
But I think that network of you telling me something, or Gibbo, or like, I'm trying to think who else it was. You go to the arena, and I remember playing with Shut Up and Dance, and they gave us about 10 promos on vinyl. I was like proper excited at the time. Yeah. And they were all mad garage records that they'd made themselves. And that's how you got stuff.
UK garage, or...
Not really. It was like their garage. They had this kind of sound with like toasting over the top of it and stuff, and they were quite niche, but they were good. And then you'd start thinking, oh, I like this kind of stuff, and it'd take you down another road rather than, for a while you'd been thinking I'd play. You might not go out of borough for a bit, and then you'd end up starting to play the same records or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I used to go to Leeds and to play music, and they'd introduce us to loads of new sounds and stuff, especially. There was a guy called Jason Fakira, I think he was called, who was like a real garage head in Leeds. Mm-hmm. And he started introducing me to this kind of quite breakbeaty garage. And I'm like, I've never heard this before at all. Yeah. I absolutely love it. Play that in Borough. And I remember playing in the corner house. I don't know if you were on. And I'd played, and this lad come up to me. I'd never seen him before in my life. He went, oh, you're brave. But it was working, but it was like super deep, scary dark garage. And I'm like, whatever. What's the worst that can happen? I'll get like a sheep's crook getting pulled off the side of the DJ box. But
which room was that in then?
The big back one.
Oh,
the main one.
Too.
Thinking I've gone from like accessible whatever it was to this mental dark garage record, and
I think that was a bit of the vibe in there, though, wasn't it? Don't you think? Especially on the Saturdays, I think the Thursdays had a really big R&B night in the early 2000s. So I think that had it had a definite identity there. But on the Saturdays, I was literally just almost following that Giles Peterson path of. Searching for the perfect beat. So it didn't really matter the genre. It was, does it excite me? Do I think it's danceable? Do I think that other people will like it?
I think you had to keep it. You could almost do like 2 you know, 2 you don't kind of thing. But you couldn't deviate from the ones that you know, or you'd lose it.
And after 1 a.m, you couldn't deviate at all. But I think that's the nature of things, isn't it? At the end of the day, I definitely appreciate the people that were there, and and they definitely stuck with it. And can you remember when we done those promo CDs as well?
I didn't get to do one of them. I think it was you and
Davy Jones.
David Jones, yeah. So I think that was you were coming in then, and I was moving towards the arena at that point.
Okay.
So I was, because they were owned obviously by the same people at the time, and I was doing stuff up there, kind of following the big sound system really, because it was massive, wasn't it, up there? And,
Amazing.
And scary at points, to be honest.
Yeah. Wonderful bass.
You could hear the drum and bass sound system about a mile away, and they never got one noise complaint. I don't know how.
What?
No, it was, honestly, you could hear it walking down Parliament Road. I could hear the rumble of like shadow boxing by Doc Scott. And you know, when you got in there, there'd be glasses falling off the bar, toilet doors rattling, everything. But it was fantastic. So, but yeah. So where were we at? Sorry.
Oh nowhere. We were just freestyling there,
waxing lyrical.
Which is the best way, really. I had a question in my mind actually, and sorry, and we'll probably do that. We'll probably go on a bit of a roller coaster. We should probably shot a tune on it a bit. Just to kind of keep the thread. But I had a thought in my mind that it deviated from something that you said earlier. So when you were playing those early gigs, because I think it's a little bit different now, was there a lot of pride in the DJ booth and the setup?
What?
No.
The first DJ box I DJ'd on looked like it was nicked off Johnny Depp off Pirates of the Caribbean. It was wonky.
Yeah.
It was made of like re-salvaged wood.
Yeah.
And the decks were like, you just put it on and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Because if you touched it, it'd flip the needle off. And then it got to a point where it was like, I'm trying to think who had a good DJ box. The Empire always had a good DJ box.
Oh yeah, wonderful.
And it got better and better. Especially, I never got to play on the one downstairs. I was
I did, but I liked the position of the old one better.
Yeah, it was heightened, wasn't it? And
yeah,
kind of
fantastic.
I'm trying to think. The one at the corner house was pretty much a table until they got the one at the end, and then
like the cage, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I always thought after a while they were lovely on the first week, and then they got progressively more manky with sugary drinks and you know, and kind of. When they started making stuff out of MDF and it all swells.
Yeah, that's probably our fault though, as much as anybody else's.
But yeah, they were all right. They were nothing to write home about. I remember the one in the arena was just pretty much basic, really. Steady, loads of paving slabs underneath it and stuff like that. But yeah, so
I liked it when they had a bit of room and when they were solid as well. Especially when you were playing vinyl, and I think that's maybe the difference to what I see nowadays. Is that because you've got a console or you've got CDJs, you haven't got that element that it has to be absolutely rock solid, especially in a big club. And I think places like the arena with a big system, you have to have like a real solid DJ booth to actually play vinyl.
Well, that's the reason I stopped. I do play a little bit of vinyl. I don't, not a great deal, but the reason I stopped was the equipment I was playing on was really badly maintained. Mm-hmm. Especially needles, tone arms, and then mixers with no knobs on them. So you'd finish a set and your fingers would all be red raw. Yeah, and it was.
Stop tweaking.
What's that?
Have to stop tweaking.
Well, there was now to tweak, so the knobs had gone off it, and I was getting a bit fed up. So I bought my own gear, which I took around with me. Yeah, and then it was maintained. Literally, I was a bit obsessed with it. It was clean. It was, it worked well. But then it kind of, you lost that vinyl element. But for me, the reality with vinyl is it was a little bit boring going from A to B, unless you were a vinyl trickster, like scratch perverts or whatever. Yeah. Which I'm not. So. No. Whereas I liked digital, especially now they've got like samplers built in, which I grew up on samplers and drum machines. Yeah. So I love that kind of thing. But it's sort of people. I think they like to see the vinyl thing. But then you're really limited to releases as well. So a lot of releases don't come out on vinyl anymore. So I play with Tractor. So it's got vinyl, but they're not like vinyl records.
And can you just interchange then, or do you? Is it? So you can actually just play a vinyl record.
I can play digital in the middle and then vinyl, and then it goes all through the same mixer. So it's the same. But I've had it a few times where people go, "You're not a real DJ." Yeah. Sort of like, sort of, But in fact, I've had that quite a lot. So the more commercial I don't usually play commercial, but you find yourself in places, people will feel the need to say that.
Tell you, yeah.
Yeah, but I always thought
your 25 years worth of experience is not enough.
But just wait until Monday when I find out where you work. I'm going to come to your workplace and harass you. And no, but you kind of the principle of DJing for me was it's for the ears, not for the eyes.
Yeah.
Unless you're a turntablist, which was.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like the people are dancing, you're playing music. And that's what it was really. So
where do you actually sit on the kind of analog digital? Are you just happy?
I think if you're not, if it looks like you're just whacking out stuff off your laptop, or you're kind of, I don't know, it feels a little bit like you kind of think, well, what's the point? You might as well put Spotify on. Or whatever. Whereas I think if you, as a DJ, it's your job to read that room, whatever room it is.
Yeah.
If nobody's dancing, don't be knocking out techno or whatever. Or or if people are having a really good time, you kind of might choose to follow a vein of music which will keep them having a good time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just, I don't think it matters what you play on. It's your kind of passion for what you're doing. Yeah. And I think when that passion goes, and you can see when it goes in some, especially like people who play all the time, if you go to a bar and sometimes it might be early doors and the DJ doesn't really look very interested, you sort of like, that's where for me I think you have to take a break and find your love again in music, which is we'll come to that anyway, but I have, like, over lockdown I tried my best to do live sets, but it was doing my head, Facebook cutting off, dog going mental. Yeah. Which,
I like the dog going mental.
Yeah, but not my dog's. It's like Begbie off Train Spotting. He's nutter. Or the Amazon man coming to the door. Yeah. And you're like, this is not working.
My parents just turned up just before we started, didn't they? I was like, the doorbell will go in a minute.
Get your dad on.
Well, they wouldn't know the difference.
No, I'm going to say nobody knows anyway. So no, it's. I think, like you say, if you go to a club.
Yeah,
you generally can't see what the DJ's on anyway because they're usually a bit higher up and stuff. And I think if the music's good and it comes across that they've got a passion for that music, that's all you need really. So, like I say, for me, it's about the ears, not the eyes really.
It's almost like I spent a few years, not a long time, like practicing turntablism on my turntables, and I kind of really, really struggled because probably some element of what I like in the music was an element of production, and I felt like the more I was kind of, spinning records back and cutting between them, the rougher it was sounding, and obviously that was partially due to my talent. But long story short, that was a conclusion that I came to, that what came out with the speakers was the important thing, not necessarily what I was doing. Do you know what I mean? So it was almost like the skill and the technical element of DJing was there for you to think about to achieve what you were trying to do, as opposed to do that and see how it sounds. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. I remember going to see Scratch Perverts at the Corner House, who were literally masters at what they did. Like kind of, I don't know what it is when you're like awe-inspired and you're like, I don't even know what they're doing. Yeah. Like fingers are blurred all together and stuff like that. And Davy Jones played first, and I said to him, mate, is Davy dead good then? And he was on CDJs and he did this scratch routine. Yeah. And I'd have to say he was on par with it was phenomenal.
Oh yeah, he's amazing, Davy.
Because I didn't know he did scratching either. And I'm just like,
I think that's where he started, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was
props to Davy for that, because it was. I've just found some photos on a hard drive of all that stuff, and Davy's on there.
We'll have to share them to put with this.
I sound like I'm on Lorraine in the morning, but I am bringing a book out.
Oh yeah! Wow!
Of all the photos from that. So I used to do photography in clubs and stuff. So the 8 days of Future and Push. So there was Sneak, Darren Emerson, James Lavelle, Scratch Perverts, Cuban Brothers, which are a bit X-rated. I'm putting them all together in a book. And my friend Sam runs a thing called Subs Publishing. So he's going to put them out in April next year.
Amazing.
So, amazing, but I might not be able to come back to Borough because some of the people might... the States people are in. It's funny.
So is this your final trip into...
It's like the Swan song when I just disappear. In a canoe out of Seaton.
Oh, well, yeah. I haven't got any contact details for Bob if anybody's asking.
I've seen him.
Cool. Do you want to shut our tune on? And we'll,
which one?
Well, whichever one you want, yeah. You'll have to have a look through your drive.
Find a Corner House tune.
All right, yeah. and we'll have a bit of a breather, get a drink. Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Which one?
No, it wasn't the cornrows one. You pick. Don't worry. Just put you on the spot. Don't worry about it.
Because this is you do the rest.
Okay.
This is old school, but it's sort of one of my favourite tunes ever. So.
Okay. See if it works.
I got the native tongue touch.
Meanie, 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 meanie.
What?
Meanie, 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 meanie. Meanie, 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 meanie. Yeah. Meanie, 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 meanie.
What?
Meanie, 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 meanie.
What?
Meanie, 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 meanie.
Hold up. Q-tip. For the next, I'm the Q-tip from a tribe called Quest. And when I quest for the buddy, I don't fess. For my Jimmy wants nothing but the best. The best. Let's stick out Jimmy and see what we can catch.
Stick 'em up, Jimmy.
Next, won't be needed unless
Jenny wanna get right to the flesh. Dancing on the dance floor. Girl, it's you that I adore. Step off stage, just scream for more. Native tongue got rhymes galore. Snap my fingers, make you mine. If not, I'll snap a second time. After that, I guarantee you will be standing next to me.
Hey yo, special shout out go out to my native tongue crew. You know, come on, Fareed, you know what I'm saying? He formerly known as Q-Tip, but I still call him Q-Tip. Let me call him Q-Tip.
Yo, what up, y'all? This is Q-Tip right here, man. The native tongues in the house, man. Hanging with my man, J. Period.
oh, child, things are getting a little easier. Oh, but it gets easier. Yeah. Oh, child, things are getting a little easier. Oh, but it gets easier. Girl, I heard you're looking for some good times. If you quest from the soul, guess what we'll find? Whole lot of fun, lots of fun together, just like kissing cousins.
Yeah, that's kind of clever.
Close like bosoms, bosoms stay close if you be my buddy. I will toast that I like Elphamos and Lucille McGillicuddy. You could be mine, and I can be your buddy.
We're back.
Hello.
Let me just check the volume. Yeah, just give a shout out to the people that I saw on the comments. So we saw Apo, how's it going, pal? So Gary Foster, how's it going, mate? I think we saw Paul Stoddart, was that right? Hope you're well, pal. Who else? Can you?
Adam Melville.
All right, Adam, Mr. Lip himself. Thanks for tuning in, pal. Who else?
Gary Beckett's in the house.
Oh,
The
all right, guys.
Beckett's.
You brought a tune that reminds you of him, you said, didn't you? We'll see if we get to that one.
Yeah. So,
Anybody else?
not that Andrew Elderfield,
Oh,
Paul Stoddart.
All right, Andrew.
Here you go.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll have to turn the volume off on that, Bob, I think. Is your mic on?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So professional as ever.
Cool. So yeah, we were just talking. Obviously, this conversation can go on forever, as always. So we said, why don't we talk about inspirations? You don't just go straight for that then.
Yeah, it's a weird one because when I was I lived at my nan's house when I lived in Sheffield, and she bought MTV for me because I was a bit bored. No internet again, and MTV had
It was a pay channel.
Oh yeah, it was proper. I never guessed what. Believe this, right? MTV used to be a music channel. No pregnant teenagers are out like that. It was music, and I remember every 10 minutes your mind being blown by everything from like indie stuff to mad dance music to American stuff. You
know what the strange thing for me is that I thought that was everybody's world, mate. Like I literally used to see it, and I used to think, well, this is what's important. And it didn't occur to me that like other people, like obviously it was popular, but that wasn't actually the main focal point for people, you know. So for me, the once a month when the dance show was on, the chart show on a Saturday morning.
Once every 3 weeks,
was
mate.
it 3 weeks? You know better than me.
Indie dance, rock. Rock was straight off.
Yeah, well, I don't know actually in our house. It was a very eclectic house. My brother and sister were into the rock music, but
Saying that I started from Metallica, so I can't talk.
yeah, but that was an absolute highlight. And
I had a VHS tape, and I used to do the stop-start thing.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I had one for Dance Energy, which
Yeah.
was a massive influence on me. You know, like inner city London hip hop, weird drum and bass stuff you'd never heard. American rap bands coming into the studio. So I had a full cassette,
Yeah.
and then I had one of the charts, and my mum chucked them away, and I'm like, no. It was like a time capsule, real time capsule as well. So
sorry, yeah. So sorry to interject there. Your nan had bought you MTV, the
MTV.
premium MTV.
proper. We're not posh, by the way. Yeah, so she got MTV, and that got me into open this new world of music. Like you say, it wasn't really pop. What we sort of immersed ourselves in was quite underground, and even though it became popular, most of your mates had jobs or whatever, and we were sort of sticking a neck out and trying to make a living playing records or whatever you were doing, or trying to get somewhere. So she brought me that, and that was a big influence. And then, like I say, new shows started emerging. So the thing I'm really into is the fact that we were on the cusp of something incredibly special. So whether it was, computers were just coming out with, I think it was Spectrum, and I don't want to show my age too much, but like early Apple Macs, because I'm dead young. And
Big 20s.
Yeah.
Commodore 64s.
Commodore Plus 4 and
Yeah.
Ataris.
Again, sorry to interject, but one of the most magical things I ever saw when I was young, obviously, and this makes perfect sense knowing who I am, or knowing the person that I am, sorry, is, when 808 State done Pacific on Top of the Pops, they just had like one of those cathode monitors in the middle of the stage, and it was like, computer music.
I watched, unfortunately, one of the guys passed away this week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Darren, not Darren, can't remember his name, sorry. And I watched the video of Pacific 707, and he was playing this mad digital saxophone thing through that computer, and I was laughing, and they were all, the equipment on stage looked like it could pack in at any minute, and it was sort of, but it was, like you say, nobody'd heard this music. It had 1 foot in Ibiza, 1 foot in a warehouse in Burnley, and you were like, what is it? And then from there on, that created this kind of like journey I wanted to be on, of finding out more. So we had a radio station in Sheffield, I can't remember what it's called, not Solid Steel, that's Cold Cut, isn't it?
So, sorry, just to hold that thought, radio station in Sheffield. So what period was this then? So this was pre-Corner House or post or same time or?
Commonly referred to as back in the day.
Oh, right, yeah. So
No,
90s,
it was 90s.
Yeah,
it was coming out, it'd been 92, like the golden age, basically.
Yeah.
So
some would say.
I was still at school. I don't think there's any argument with that, to be honest. It's class time, like hip hop, rave, everything.
I just mean that some people would say it was maybe a few years earlier. That's all. But yeah, that kind of.
But then a few years earlier, I thought it was less computerized.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Whereas when it had started becoming in some form digital, and then you've got like. So there was a radio show, and I think alternate sample it. So it's Chris Duckenfield again from Warp, and it's the one where he says, "Watch your bass bins, I'm telling you."
Yeah.
And I remember listening to when he used to say it, and they'd play this mad breakbeat rave stuff, and I'm like, "What the hell's this?" I'm like, "I love it, I absolutely," but I don't know what is it? Where's it from? What do you call it? And I remember we'd gone to this concert in Don Valley Bowl in Sheffield, me and my mate Alex and a few others, and my mate Steve's mum used to lend him the Escort estate, so we'd all ram in.
Yeah.
Far too many.
How many?
Far too many. No.
That's the classic, isn't it? It's a classic. 11 in a Fiesta or whatever it was. I don't know.
Quite lucky to be alive, to be quite frank.
Yeah.
But he'd have this radio station on the radio, and it was like if you swore so it was live, no delay, and people would phone in, and you'd hear them, they'd get cut off, and all. It was so like patchy but good. Yeah. And we got to this concert, and it was a band we wanted to see, and there's this tent, and I'm like, what's that noise? And all I could hear was this rumble, mad rumble, and I remember opening this like a tent marquee door. And I got in, and I'm just like, what the hell's this? There was a man with his head in the bass bin, absolutely off his cake hole. It stunk of Vicks Vapor Rub, at the back. And I think it might have, I'm trying to think, they were called Sonic and Uzi. That was the DJ duo.
All right, I've not heard of him. I don't.
Yeah, it was full on turbo rave stuff, and
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
just like, this is unreal. And
Yeah.
it was, so that kind of stayed with me all the way to this day. So I like music because of the kind of phonic element. So like that kind of, when music makes you go like, whoa, you know, that kind of,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what kind of music it is.
Yeah, yeah.
When the sound's been concentrated on. And I remember just from there, it was like a journey from then on in, really. So
For my purposes, when you say full on rave, are you talking high BPMs? Are you talking kind of screechy vocals? What do you mean, like break beats? What?
It's the predecessor to drum and bass, basically.
Yeah, yeah,
So
okay.
it was like, you'd get elements of like jungle, which wasn't really called jungle at the time, and then you'd get like kind of alternate sounding stuff, Prodigy maybe a little bit.
Like
but
sped
again,
up break samples and
yeah, and then chopped up samplers,
Yeah, yeah.
very rudimentary kind of stuff.
fantastic.
And then they'd wheel out a singer who'd sing, usually the word rise up, isn't it, or something like that.
Feels so real.
Touchy word, yeah, something like that. It's never
Hey,
changed.
it worked. It worked.
It's
I loved it.
Still working, isn't it? And then from and like you say, it was just kind of raw. I don't want to use the word visceral because I sound like some art douchebag, but
Go on, just use it.
visceral. You know, really gritty kind of. At any time it could just go wrong, sound system collapsed or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was fascinating. And then like around the kind of periphery of that was graffiti in Sheffield.
Yeah.
It was at a point where there was in redevelopment, so bits of it were like, it felt a bit like kind of what Berlin looks like, you know, kind of some bits a bit scruffy and
Yeah.
you
Like
know.
underdeveloped and a lot of history, and then other parts are.
Yeah, but exciting at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
And the people you met at these places, you know full well, they varied immensely.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, some were kind of a bit, I don't know, there was people in there who were like top of the scene kind of thing, and you'd be like, who's that kind of
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
And
Real
then
faces, wasn't there? Yeah.
And then you'd get people in who actually made their own stuff music-wise, and,
Yeah.
and then you got to start knowing people. A lot of them were creative, so they were like gateways into other things. So for me, I did study graphic design because I used to like record covers.
Yeah.
And that was my goal, was to do record covers.
Yeah.
Did a few record covers. Yeah.
Did you do DJ Vadim? Is that what I saw recently?
Yeah, I did it was Don't Be Scared. It was, I think he'd had major eye surgery at the time, and it was about, basically this album was about after a while fear subsides, because once you've been that close to something scary.
Yeah.
Anyway, but he was in East Ham in London. I just did it was quite a big release. He's a big deal, so he's sort of from St. Petersburg in Russia. But
So when you say that you've done a couple of record covers, and now kind of vinyl in HMV is all about the visual, is that not something that you think maybe you look at again? Or
yeah, but the visual's not good on record covers
Yeah,
now. It's just glossy, and it's sort
Okay,
of, whereas
yeah.
so I collect Mo Wax records mainly.
Yeah. I'll have to have a look in the loft, see if I've got any for you.
So, but the covers were always really good.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there were typography and, you know, exciting techniques. And again, a lot pre-computer, so there was photography and stuff. And I used to like looking through the racks and thinking, oh, I like this, I like that. And then, like you say, it was people were putting stuff out, and you had to really try to make it stand out. So,
Yeah.
and then that was like, as I say, that fitted into the music, the stuff that surrounded it, you know, people socially. I know people, they're like family to you. You know, you met them in a club,
Yeah.
and they've been your mate ever since.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is weird, isn't it? So it's sort of
It's
like,
amazing.
Yeah.
It's
So-
absolutely amazing. Some of my longest standing friends now are from those environments, and I've actually made some really good new ones, which is bizarre because I don't kind of readily make that many friends, to be fair. But even just the two of us.
But I think if I went to a club now and tried to make friends, you'd look a bit strange, you know, because clubs are quite young now, aren't they? And I think,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, like I suppose,
You know what the
think they
strange,
always were
you know what the
young.
strange thing about that is? The newer generation, the younger generation, are all really tall. You know, like every generation gets bigger.
It's not. You're shrinking, mate.
I remember when I was last few times I was playing it Inside Out in Darling, I was in the booth, and it was a decent booth, but maybe it was like a foot off the ground. You know what I mean? I'm thinking everybody is as tall as me. You know, obviously they weren't 7 foot, but like, you know, I went from kind of, you know, not that it was a noticeable thing, but feeling like someone who was maybe a little bit tall to the younger generation.
Might have been like a special night for tall kids.
Yeah.
I don't know.
a theme night. So sorry, I've interrupted your train of thought. So your train
Gone
of
now, mate, gone.
no, the train of thought was that, which I was actually really fascinated about. It was really there was quite a lot going on in Sheffield then before you even got into DJing, and obviously a lot of inspiration that had made you want to buy records and
Well,
get involved.
Sheffield, it has always been a massively musical city. So whether it was like Human League,
Let me just let the dog in. Tell us about Sheffield.
Human League, Cabaret Voltaire, Pulp, kind of. I'm trying to think who else comes from. Def Leppard, classic band. Yeah, so loads of stuff like that, and it was always a pioneering city. So I think because it was quite an industrial city, it got quite bombed heavily. They're quite a resourceful group of people, and it is still very creative as a place, really. So don't go back much, mind.
No. So what brought you to Middlesbrough then from Sheffield?
No, I'd left college in Rotherham actually, and I got into a college in Cheshire for a year, and I didn't like it. And then my second choice was Middlesbrough, so I came to
Poly.
Oh, now Green Lane Art College.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Proper hipster. And I went to art college, and then around art, like going out on a night was like, considering it was a small town, there's people queuing around the block to get in the arena, and there's bands everywhere, and it was probably one of the pinnacles of what was happening in Borough. I'd say it was about, when would it be? Maybe about 96, 97?
Oh, I don't know. I would have thought before then, but obviously because the gap in my experience and knowledge there is, I started going to the arena at 13. It's not something to be really proud of. But
Did you say 13?
I said 13. Yeah. I had an older brother who used to
smuggle you in
go.
his coat.
Hey,
Smuggle you in his coat.
I've always looked aged as well. Long hair, piercings and things like that. So anyway, yeah. So that was my first, and I was 13 in '93. So obviously, the kind of birth of Acid House and stuff. That
maybe it was earlier then.
But I know that it was definitely firing on all cylinders when you had, obviously, there was Havana, obviously, and the arena, and you also had the Sugar Shack from about 1992, from a house perspective, anyway.
So I was on the arena side of because they're two very different clubs. So because I worked at the arena, I used to get in free all the time. So I spent most of my time in the arena and the corner house. And it was like an education, really, like the people, everything from, I remember mad trance nights, people coming up from Halifax to put on trance nights, which I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
Wasn't into it, but when I went, I'm like, that's quite into it. They'd done all the decor in like fluorescent.
I was going to say, it must be neon.
Like Megadog, like daft boots and furry trousers and stuff. And then the next week you go and it was like crackers drum and bass, like really world-leading drum and bass in a small town with a little population.
Yeah.
You've got Goldie, Chemistry and Store.
What was that on it? Is that what
Yeah,
you're referring
so-
to, or was the other?
Yeah, it was on it so on it was a brave move from anyone's standards. So
Yeah.
you stop a house night, which was
Popular.
popular is an understatement, isn't
Yeah.
it? It was ridiculous. Coaches coming from like Bishop Auckland, Newcastle, and then you think put a drum and bass night on, and
Yeah.
you're like, we're not talking about, nice chilled melodic drum and bass.
No,
this
no,
is
no.
like, there's been
Ed
moments
Rush.
when Ed Rush and like, I'm trying to think. There's been moments in there where I've been a bit scared. Like,
Yeah.
it's like the theme tune to one of your nightmares. But it was good, and it took a long time to build up, and it never reached its potential because it was far too ahead of its time.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I
drum and
think
bass
so.
is massive now.
Yeah.
This was 15 years back.
Yeah.
But I've got all the flyers and everything. But I remember there was one night where ID magazine came to the arena, and like the London fraternity seemed to come with them, and there was fashion was mental. I remember there was one guy, and he was about 7 foot in a Tommy Hilfiger full length jacket. No one had ever seen one of these before. It was like a sleeping bag,
Yeah.
and he was just strutting around. He was taking photos of everybody, and the music was incredible, and the atmosphere.
What was the DJs?
Chemistry and Storm.
Oh, wow, yeah,
who's
okay.
No longer with us, is she? So
No.
Docs. No, it wasn't Doc Scott. The lineup for a fiver was incredible, like really, really incredible. And but what it was. I realised later on as I got older, it wasn't about the musical lineup; it's about the energy that was around it.
Yeah.
Without sounding like kind of vibey or anything, but it was like you could when you walked in, you were excited. You were like, "Who are these people?" you like a kind of new energy had come into this club. And then kind of went on for quite a while. It was like Saturday night, and they put other stuff downstairs. But I always thought it was a bit far in front of its time. There's a guy called Leo who started with Fabio. Started the drum and bass. What was Fabio's club called?
Right, Speed,
or was it Rage or?
Oh, the early one was Rage.
Early one, yeah. And I don't know what happened with those, but anyway, they were like. But I don't know whether Middle was ready for it. I enjoyed it, but it was like financially, it was quite a punt. It was a
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and I can't imagine what those decision-making meetings or look like. But
that's in my book when in later life.
You're selling this book, aren't you? Do you want to tell us?
No, that's another book when I tell the juicy stories of Middlesbrough.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree. I think it probably was ahead of its time. There was a big buzz, I think. I'm not sure. I think it was around the time that On It went on in the arena. And LTJ Bookham had brought out Logical Progression on it. And that really kind of brought it to... They put it in the spotlight, didn't it, really, I think, that album. There was a lot of things. I don't know what was...
Do you remember Vinyl Connection as well, behind the bus station, the drum and bass record shop?
Yes, I do, yeah. What was the lad's name who ran
Dave.
Dave.
No, it's now in the police.
Yeah. He used to come in the corner house. Regular.
Yeah, big lad, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Tall lad, yeah. So it was mad how niche that was to have a drum and bass record, like a pretty hardcore record shop. And I'm like, wow. But it was good, because I used to buy all the good-looking stuff from there.
Yeah.
And then later on in life, I realised you could play them at half speed and they sound fantastic. So
yeah.
But it was kind of a time of change, really, like a new. So the house thing was getting a bit tired.
Yeah.
It was kind of. I don't know what kind of house it'd be classed as, was it? It was like...
at the time...
House and garage, wasn't it? It wasn't
like
just house.
Funky, disco house, filter house perhaps, French house. I don't know.
US garage and Strictly Rhythm stuff, wasn't there? And stuff like that, and kind of... Yeah, I remember the French thing. And then it kind of... It sort of changed, but at the time, it was like a monopoly on Middlesbrough. There wasn't many people doing clubs, or anything decent. Like, there was a lot of cheese about, and there was a lot of... almost like, I don't know what you'd call them, like bars like the Royal Exchange, which they were rammed, absolutely rammed. But they...
so from a like club night perspective, you mean?
But they were like...
I mean, the Sugar Shack was running, wasn't it, the whole time?
The Sugar Shack was credible, though, because you had like Sanchez and stuff on, didn't you, and stuff like that.
And you had the arena. I see what you mean.
Came later, didn't it? And
that was... You know what, I need to do a timeline of all this, so I can... so I can like kind of really pinpoint the time scales, or maybe Apple come and educate us because he knows it all,
The teacher.
For sure.
Yeah. No, I do think, because from my point of view, I didn't until Graham started doing stuff at the arena. Empire. I never really went to the Empire, so I wasn't into 70s stuff. So I know all my mates used to go to Brutus Gold and get dressed up.
I used to go to that, to be fair.
Which was a laugh.
Yeah, it was.
But it's 70s stuff, isn't it? So it's sort of, and then. Like it was, the Fridays were rammed, weren't they? Was it Fridays when they used to do the big DJs?
Yeah.
And like Paul Van Dyke and stuff like that, and it was on fire, wasn't it? So, but I was never part of that. I was more into I suppose, underground stuff. Because I don't know. Probably to my detriment, like when everyone's getting DJ gigs and I'm sat there knocking out weird garage music.
Yeah, I think you do. Like, I mean, it's I don't know whether you'd call it brave at the time, but for me, there's never really any value in doing anything but following your nose creatively. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think there can be value for a period, but ultimately you just end up spending your time doing something that you don't really know why you're doing it. And that's definitely where I am at 42 years old. In music and DJing, that's if there's no value in it, there's no time for it, if you know what I mean.
Well, I think if you don't have a passion, everyone can see it apart from you.
Everyone can feel it.
It's like it's sort of. So from that point, I'd left the arena at that point. So I was like, I'd end up working at the Ark in Stockton, and we did some stuff there with like Scratch Perverts and stuff. It was okay. It worked, and it was good to see the DJs. It was a good place to DJ as well. And ironic, that's where I met my wife, actually, so it was all right. It was, and then from there, I'd started kind of busting loose a bit, so I was getting gigs in Newcastle, Leeds, a couple in London, and then I was starting to work on production, so I'd started making records, and like really getting a sound, and I'd started getting into breakbeat, which was like Plump DJ, Stanton Warriors, sort of, you know, freestylers. And I think we did a stint at the arena where we had all that stuff on. It was really good for a block of time. But again, it was never gonna cement into the sound of that place, because it was kind of not faddy, but it was like it was a southern thing that was touching north.
You know what's really interesting about that? I've just picked up on something. I don't follow them or anything. I don't follow many people nowadays on Twitter, but I picked up on a Stanton Warriors piece of footage from a gig in Dubai. It looked absolutely amazing, by the way, and the music was phenomenal. So it just goes to show, you know, those guys that you kind of, they burst onto the scene, and you know they're entertaining, and like you say, doesn't really cement itself, but they just keep trucking. You know what I mean? They're just artists, and probably should check in. You know,
I think they're bigger in Russia and Spain than they ever were in this country. Okay. So what happened next is we moved to Leeds, and the break scene there was really good. So like the Corn Exchange, and there was people pushing the local people, and I did like a few gigs in, I think it was Beaver Works, which was right on the edge, really on the edge on the town, and that was really good. And then it sort of, from there on, I got really into that stuff. So I had like loads of records. It was all on vinyl as well. Yeah. And you could, you know, the record shops were selling it and stuff. But then it all of a sudden just died, like really stopped, and then something fresh popped up. But like you say, Stanton Warriors carried on because it's probably the only thing they know what to do. And
maybe, I don't know.
Or
dedicated to it.
You know, a lot of DJs just think, oh well, I'm just going to make house music because I'll get some money, and it's like, again, there's not really any passion in it.
I've never seen many successful transfers, to be fair. DJ Zinc did a decent job. I don't know if you heard any of his.
He always comes back though, doesn't he? So I think the thing with Zinc is his foundation is breakbeat, whether it's just breaks as in a form of music, or drum and bass, or rave stuff, or garagey stuff. It's all around the same kind of sound.
Bass.
Yeah, bass and like urban feel to it. Whereas if he has done, even the house stuff he does sounds kind of bassy and break.
Yeah, it does.
It's like he knows where he's at. And the guy wrote Super Sharp Shooter, so he's like...
Do what he likes.
He pretty much, yeah. He owns the shop, doesn't he? So, yeah, so... But and so where we are. So I'd gone to Leeds, and I'd got residencies in Leeds where I could play what I really, really wanted to play. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't playing for the audience to the extent where I was trying to please people. I knew I had to keep them there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But my thing was like finding music where the bass would be like, bloody hell, what's this? Or like the stuff that was super fresh.
Yeah.
And then I had like a few residencies, and I used to put my own club nights on.
This is Leeds?
Leeds, yeah. Oh, wow. So I put my own club nights on in Middlesbrough first. So I had one called Enter the Dragon, which was kind of beats in the back, breakdancing in the front, which was mad.
Yes, I remember that now. You know what? Of all the nights that you've done,
that's the best one.
That had been erased from me. I was like, okay.
We had like this is how old it was. Slide projections of Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee all over the place. And I remember one night, one of the slide projectors burst into flames in the club.
Everyone thinking that it was prop.
Pyrotechnics, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. It's just Apple sending me a message. All right, pal. Cheers. We should be keeping up with the comments. Sorry, go on. So so we were in Leeds.
No, we're in Middlesbrough, Enter the Dragon. So this was a Wednesday night, and there was like 200 people in, and it was just like, but the breakdancing night, kids had come from Manchester, and they'd have bits of deck chair sewn to their hats, and I'm like, what's that for? And it makes your head spin faster, you know. And it was Levi used to do the electro stuff in the front. Mm-hmm. I don't know where Levi is now, whether he's still around here or not. And then we'd do the back room, we'd bring a few guests in and stuff like that. And we were dabbling with bits like French house nights. We did a French house night, and it was £4 for a bottle of red wine. And we had Scott and Scooby. No, it was Gibbo and Scooby playing. And I think everyone was paralytic because the wine was so
Sounds
cheap.
Awesome.
It was called Gallic sauce. You see what I did there?
Gallic?
Gallic, as in French.
Oh, yeah.
Sauce, as in where it comes from. But everything in Borough's covered in garlic sauce. So it was a nod towards that, really.
All right,
Bit of a dad joke.
You know what? To be fair, if you could put that back on, Scooby and Gibbo, £4 bottles of red. I'm coming.
Blossom Hill.
Don't matter.
Never seen France. Yeah, so we were doing that, and that was fantastic. Really, like a lot of people coming together creatively to do that. And then I can't remember what other nights I did actually.
You did Brazilian, obviously folk box.
Oh yeah, God yeah. So I was quite heavily in with the council at the time. My wife was like arts development officer, and they said, "Do you want to put on an electronic festival?" This is on a slight tangent. So I was researching a festival called Plug, and I'd booked like Audio Bullies, and it was in that little courtyard in the town hall, and it was like an electronic festival. And they said, "Do you want to go on a research trip to Manchester to see Deejay Shadow, fully paid? Deejay Shadow and Errol Al can do the Wizard's Sleeve." Yeah. And I'm like, what? So they paid, and I stayed in this hotel. I kid you not, it was absolutely pimping. You know, like I couldn't reach both sides of the bed if I laid down, and on the top of Manchester. And it was like loads of stuff like that. And then I went from there, and then that got cancelled because they couldn't get the right licenses. So I did Brazilian, which was, I'd got married in Brazil. So I put on a Brazilian, I just fell in love with the music. And put on this Brazilian festival, and I had Giles Peterson. We had a resident called Cliffy, who's like a Brazilian legend, who lives in Portugal now. And then other guests, people from Mr. Bongo.
So this was Brazilian?
Yeah.
And this started...
2000 or something, I think.
Not the year, so the format, sorry. So
oh, it was a festival. So,
yeah, oh, okay.
But again, little... bureaucracy things where they wouldn't give us a license, so you were like, we had to make it free, which was all right because it wasn't.
Was that because of the day? Was there some problem with Sundays or something?
No, it was just hard work really. So we moved it into the back of Mima, and then we got sponsored by what's the Brazilian Brahma.
That was a nice deal, that wasn't it?
It was good if you wanted to, not good if you wanted to stay sober when you were running it. But just, but we had, it was really nice. But it was again. I wish if I could go back and promote it much better. But that was good. We met loads of nice people, and then from there I'd had a bit of a break. I'd done other things in the past, but I started Funkbox with a few mates in the top of the Dickens. What was it, the Gold Room?
All right, yeah.
Which might not have been the right place for it, but it was class.
It's a big room.
Yeah, but we used to just play what we wanted, and it was like, so they were like funk, soul, daft curveballs, drum and bass. And it was good, and then we moved from there to back of the corner house, Rouge, was it?
Oh, Rouge, yeah. So the corner was area 2 as it was later on. Yeah,
and then from there we went to Mink, which is when it started working.
Yeah.
And Mink was really good for DJing in.
Yeah.
Like
I've never DJed in there. Is it still there?
No, I've just for sale. So if you fancy going off on it. So
I wouldn't mind. It's just time and money.
I've just looked through the door on the way through town, and it's exactly the same.
Yeah,
and it's it was a good place to DJ.
Yeah.
And then from there, I went to Twisted Lip, and that was just starting. Baker Street had just started to change.
That was amazing.
Yeah, but it was like all ropey solicitors and kind of.
What the people that were in there?
Most of them have all gone, I think, but they were like. They were kind of defence solicitors, and there was like a few houses, weirdly, right in the middle of town. And then the council just gave people like a carte blanche, pretty much, didn't they? But
you know what I loved about the Twisted Lip and Funkbox? Obviously, this is going to sound really focused on yourself, but obviously there's the murals on Baker Street. Is it Baker Street, Bedford Street? Your murals.
Yeah.
So there's those, and obviously... There's some of your portraits in there, is that right? Is it? So you've got...
they're like paste-ups, like...
Amy Winehouse, Biggie Smalls.
Forgot about Stevie Wonder,
Yeah. So obviously it's got that character.
It was basically my art gallery. I think that's what the whole point was. Like, they said to me, like, do you want to be in charge of creative? So I did all the beer garden and stuff like that. And I used to do stuff, and I'd come up in the day and just paste it on the walls whenever. Didn't even used to ask. Go up and paint the DJ box. And it became... something nice. What would you think the capacity was? 30?
I don't know.
And that was pushing it, I think. It was like, but it was always full.
Yeah,
and
really
people. What I liked about, so obviously, I live in Newcastle now because my wife's a midwife up there. But when I was down here, what I used to love about Twisted Lip is that money people had. It was like they'd really earned it, and they were going to have a good time regardless. And it was like every Saturday was like the last day on earth. I wish I'd photographed it, but I was busy DJing.
You know what? That was definitely our destination of choice.
Yeah.
I mean, we were at the stage where we weren't going out a lot, but that was where I was heading because obviously I liked a different type of ale as well, which wasn't very common in the town.
Is it like the craft beer thing?
Yeah. And obviously, that's probably my favourite era of your DJing that I listened to.
Well, I think my sound at that point we used to have this famous no request sign, and I think 50% thought you were an absolute douchebag, and 50% respected that you were just playing your set or whatever, and kind of. It meant you could develop a sound, and over week after week, you're like, well, that didn't work. That works. That this, and
I had a real fun memory. You had me on there a couple of times doing the early slot, and it was just so reactive. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
I got to a point on Orange Pit when you'd walk in and people would go like, "Yay, they're pleased to see you." Yeah. But I'm trying to think with a twisted lip.
But there was people coming specifically for your DJing as well, wasn't there? Because I used to see people in there that I knew that knew you, if you know what I mean.
So I knew Simon when I was doing that night vaguely, and he used to come in every Saturday. Simon Collin.
Oh yeah.
So Simon come in with Ben, he's a huge lad, and you could always see him come up the stairs. And he'd asked me to put this record on, which was a Ski Whiff record. It's like a bit country sounding. Anyway, he'd always ask for it on. I'd put it on for him. And anyway, the night went on, and he come to an inevitable end at one point, and then Simon said to me, "Ding dong. Do you want to come to Munich, all expenses paid?" And I'm like a bit skeptical at this point. Why? What do you want? This is like, I don't know. What do you want? And he went, "Oh, it's like the best thing that ever happened this night." And he took me to Munich or to Oktoberfest to say thank you. And I was just like, honestly, it was incredible. Like at the actual Oktoberfest. And I'm like, in your head, you're like, almost kind of, this is too good to be true, and it was phenomenal. And but that Funkbox was really good. It was like I say, we used to record it every Saturday, so we've got loads of mixes online.
Really? Yeah.
There's about 7 mixes, and then like loads of stuff really. But he was kind of like the visuals. But I think the thing with Funkbox as well is like, I used to do. Dan was the bar manager downstairs, and Dan would make sure sound was all right, visuals were good, and stuff like that. So it was like a good little partnership as well. But towards the end, I was travelling down on a night.
That does make a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it's not the travelling down; it's travelling back. And your matchsticks on your eyes, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you're travelling as well, you can't drink, which is, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it gets you. It's a social lubricant, isn't it? So
it is, yeah. It is a bit easier, isn't it? Cool. Do you want to play another record? Or we'll get ourselves organised.
Yes.
Get a dog organised and door organised. What's next for us? View. Oh, there you go.
I'm going to play this. So I'm mad into Luke Vibert, who's Aphex Twin's best mate. Don't know that scary.
So is this something that's new, old?
No, it's like the epitome of Funkbox. It takes a
there we go.
funk record and updates it a bit, which is like the epitome of what Funkbox was.
We're back on. Just give a few shouts out to the people in the comments. So, must be a friend of yours, Dominic JP Nelson Ashley.
Original friend. Good lad, Dom.
I don't think we said hello to Gareth Healy earlier, did we? Yeah, and there's a few requests for a chat about the Port Old Calf. We're going. What would you call it? Legacy, Borough Legacy. Now we're going Port Old Calf. I don't think it is still there.
Deep.
I don't think it is still there, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Is it?
It's got new owners, so we'll go into that in a minute anyway. But.
Yeah. So musically, I think the broad question is where are you at now? Then what's?
It's a funny one because we've had lockdown, and I think that changed everything. Like I said, I tried doing a few live streams.
You weren't comfortable with that because they were good.
Yeah, but I respond off an audience that's there when you stood in your living room and you're like, it's like kind of. I didn't have the technology. I was doing it through Facebook. It was getting cut off, and then I sort of thought, do you know what? Instead of kind of trying to capture something that you're not going to get for a while, which is playing in clubs, why don't you just have a break? So I took a bit of like a sabbatical and started I've got a friend called Richie who played at Twisted Lip once, comes up from Margate.
It was a good night, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really good. Really nice guy as well. And he said to me about finding your love in music and it solves all your problems. And I was like, all right, okay. And then I realised what he meant later on. So I started listening to different music. I'd read a book a while back and it talked about go and listen to something you won't ever listen to. So it could be like, I don't know, Colombian hip hop or, you know, techno or something like that. So I started finding stuff on the internet and I was getting really into Paul Woolford's project Special Request. I don't know if you've seen that. So I did some designs before once for Paul Woolford back when I lived in Leeds when he had a thing called Hip Therapist. And I liked what he did. He was challenging. He's almost changed the landscape because all the kids are listening to what now sounds like regurgitated rave music. You know, sounds a bit like alternate, sounds a bit like this and that. And I'd got into new stuff. So I got into kink, not leather and stuff like that. Like Kink the artist.
Yeah, he's kind of like a live show now, isn't he?
It just blows my mind. This Bulgarian techno dude who's got his head round equipment and he seems like a really nice guy as well, and I got into that, and then I'm starting to think, well, you know, there's no real boundary to anything. Like I don't really want to DJ commercially, so I'm being very picky about where I DJ, and I don't, because I do art stuff in the day, I don't really need to work all the time as a DJ. So I started like getting into new stuff, and you're just popular as I. It's a postman. I've just seen him go past. So getting into all manner of things really. So, and then that's led into me. Like when I do production stuff, I've been working on more kind of electronic techno-based stuff and learning about music and production. And I don't have it comes with age. The sense of urgency is disappearing. You know, like sat in the studio with my slippers on and kind of just making stuff. And
I've got an MPC Live, like a.
Is it?
Yeah, like a laptop almost music production thing. And I find that I'm doing that for fun as best I can, and then I really get into a project. But like you say, without that sense of urgency at my age, I think I kind of get to the point where if it's not fun anymore, I don't really finish it. And I've got a few bits that I'm really sat here now thinking I really should finish them because I really enjoyed them and I'd like to put them out, but it's not.
Yeah, because I'm like mega ADHD, it's really hard for me to finish a track or a book or anything like that. Yeah. So, but when I do, and when I get really into something that I enjoy, I can really kind of champion at it. So I've made a few tracks, and I'm like, these are good. You know, they stand up.
Yeah.
And then like, what am I going to do with them? And then I think, you know, should I just send them to a label and get them to put them out, or like I've run out of knowledge at that point. So, but I've got
knowledge in terms of how to market you.
No, like imagine if you had a limited amount of knowledge and you did something, but then it got to a point where you needed more knowledge. So
production wise.
Yeah, production wise, how the industry works. You know, what's it's all new. It's all brand new, isn't it? It's no longer, you know, people used to bang 1,000 vinyls in a tranny van and just drive around every record shop.
Okay, I get
now
you.
It's like distribution deals and all that kind of thing. So because I was going to talk to you about, we had a record label before, didn't we? So so I'd started at the time. The guys from Unique 3 had bought the Arena, and Unique 3 were linking back to Sheffield. I read it in The Guardian. The reason why Warp Records started was because of Unique 3. So they'd heard a Unique 3 record played in a club and thought, oh, we're going to do some of this stuff. Yeah. And then the rest history, really. So I got the opportunity to start a record label called Mutate. And the idea was 1 foot in the past, 1 foot in the future, and making really good stuff. So we had Mark was on there from Alternate, Cybeg, who does all the music for the Channel 4, where all the numbers come together.
Oh, yeah.
He does all the music. He's
like an ambient.
No, it's like glitchy, weird kind of stuff. Shades of Rhythm, and loads of new producers, which ended up being really good friends. So at one point, I remember we were like, we'd have people in Brazil, Canada, Sardinia, all over the world, and it was great. But it came to a point where the new thing had kicked in with Spotify, and things were changing. Not in my eyes. For a consumer, it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh, where can I get this music from? Go on Spotify.
Yeah.
For a business, it's terrible. It's
Yeah.
like, I think we got a check once it was way under a penny for 32 worldwide releases. And you were like,
oh my God.
I could put that energy in walking around the town centre looking for a quid coin.
Yeah.
And that's like 4 years' wages.
Yeah, I mean,
but
it depends what you're looking at success-wise, but I know what you...
No, it's just demoralising. So it was kind of... We got to a point and we had to change distributors because Sony stopped dealing with electronic music and they wanted to deal with country and western and Latin, which is massive in terms of money. Mm-hmm. And then to reset everything back up, we thought, shall we just stop here at a good point? And we'd had some. I listened to the stuff the other day, and some of the stuff's really good. Some's very weird and challenges like the status quo a bit. But it was like an education as well, because a lot of it you were learning on, for me anyway, about A&R and publishing and all this stuff. And I would do it again. I'd really, because now you can just do it on Bandcamp. We've got friends who so I'm quite good friends with Smooth from Smooth and Terrell, and they put like a 7-inch vinyl on Bandcamp, and within 2 or 3 days it's gone. So the vinyl thing on there is really good.
You think then it's kind of gone full circle in the sense that it was a bit simpler previously, then it's got really complicated, but that seems to be for the big players. So the independent artist does now have an opportunity to... one example I would give is that Danny Cribbett has got his own webpage called Edits by Mr. K. And it's all, it's got, I don't know, a million releases that you recognise. The one that springs to mind was like Janet Jackson, Michael Jackson. But it's his edits of them, and he just sells them from the webpage. That's it.
That's the thing with Bandcamp, though, isn't it? It's at the minute it's very unregulated, where there's so many re-edits on there, and I don't. You'd have to question how many people are clearing samples and stuff.
Oh, no one.
Nobody. And it's like SoundCloud, and there's going to come a day when people get pulled in for it. But
it'll just be the same as it'll be like. I can't remember what it's called, but like media recognition, like they have on Facebook and like they have on YouTube. I mean, YouTube, I put some DJ sets up when we were doing the live streams for Boogaloo Weekender, and it literally just recognises all the tracks. It tells you all the tracks that are in your set, and it says all this music is on your video, and some of it you're not allowed to share, and it just literally cuts it off from the moment it starts to the moment it finishes out of the video.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
But they'll just have to apply something like that. SoundCloud will get that, and Bandcamp will get that. But at the moment,
maybe this takes us back though to vinyl mixing, where all you have to do to get over that is just go really fast with a crossfader and confuse Facebook.
Yeah, I mean that kind of does work. I saw a video of a guy once before where like on consoles like this, you can change the pitch without changing the speed. And that really throws it off as well, apparently. So obviously, if it's trying to recognise As by Stevie Wonder in the key of F, and you put it in the key of E, it actually doesn't sound that different, but it doesn't know that.
I spent a bit. I did about. It's not prior to lockdown, and so it was the first couple of years when I got to Newcastle. I was doing a lot of DJ, like 3 or 4 times a week, and used to get a lot of old boys, especially when you play funkier stuff. They'll get the Shazam out, and they hold it up, and they see them in pubs, and they'd look, and it's just, why don't you just ask? I'll just tell you.
Because you might cover the turntable. That's no train spot.
No, I suppose they just want to add it straight to Spotify, don't they? But it's sort of, it kind of, for me, it just removes a little bit of the kind of, if you can have whatever you want, whenever you want, it's not special. It's like having ice cream every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It gets a bit boring, doesn't it?
So I need to hold the thought about where you are musically, because that was interesting. But
I don't know.
Short answer. But that was why I actually bothered to buy a small console, because it was lockdown that really kind of got me, I won't say back into DJing, back into music, because that's just, it's ever present. But I just hadn't done anything for ages for good reason. And I turned Facebook on one day, and I got one turntable out on a microphone. By the way, I'd never used a microphone before in my life. And I thought, I'll go. It wasn't even my idea, really. I was thinking I'll do it at the table. And then I was like, it's a nice day, I'll do it outside. And Carol said, why don't you open the bar and do it there? And I was like, and
They got us through lockdown, then they were really good.
Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, well, you know what? I really enjoyed them, and the interaction was a big deal in lockdown. You know, so
we used to like getting the shout outs.
Yeah,
We'd be in the hammock because lockdown for us was for some people it was quite hard to stay off the drink, wasn't it? I've not got a job and got all this free time. Phil's got the decks out. Let's get
perfect.
Drunk.
Yeah. No,
Phil's got a bar. I'm getting one.
I always remember sending an email at work saying, you know, if you need me, obviously the world's in a funny place in a minute. Just give me a ring. I can come out with short notice if someone's got coronavirus or something like that. And I wrote on the email, I barely drink nowadays anyway, so you know, no great shakes there. I'll always be available. And I think from the moment I pressed send on that email, I must have had a drink every day for about 2 months, apart from when I was at work, of course. So yeah, but that. And that's what got me started again DJing, and you know, I had some wonderful people contact me for gigs and things, and good gigs though, you know, not stuff where I felt.
I think from an external, so I'm, as I say, up in Gateshead at the minute. From an external point of view, looking kind of, I say down, I don't mean down, I mean it's geographically south. Isn't it, to Borough. You look like after lockdown, people kind of getting Phil on because he's, you know, there's a almost like a new burst of energy around you, weren't they? And I think
oh really?
Well, yeah, because you seem to.
You never feel it on your own, though, do you?
I think the thing is with DJing, you never see it. It's what other people see, isn't it? So it's like, you know, you put things on, like, I don't know, you put on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and I see them, and you're like, you know, is it Tomoko where you're playing?
Yeah.
And then I saw you at Canteen and Cocktails and things like that, and then I listened to your sets, which is the nice thing about technology, is the availability if you didn't go.
Yeah.
But then it also creates that thing about, oh, come to the next one kind of thing, you know, like. But yeah, it's good to see. So it's sort of, you know, I do think there was like a bit of a burst after that, and I think it's probably from those sessions. But it just goes to show if you can have a good time with one deck and a microphone, you know, it's all about the music. It's not about the technology, is it? So I could, if I had a bag of really shit old records and one record player in a bar, I could make people have a good time.
Yeah.
They don't care about them. Mixing's pretty much like, I always find mixing's as its place within certain types of music, and seamless mixing as well. But like, I've seen Giles Peterson play on Mr. Scruff, where he's literally just plonked one record on, and then another, and it's been phenomenal, you know, like, and you're like, the music's good. I know what he's like. I'm not expecting him to be like, you know, your Francois Kevorkians or whatever, or these seamless mixes that one record's the same, go all the way to the end. And for me, it was about the music. So it's like kind of
my perception on that is similar, actually. I mean, there's DJs who can do both, and the one that springs to my mind is Moody Man. So I've heard him play like deep house and techno sets where you are just kind of beat matching, and he's not really doing much interaction. But then other times, obviously, it is a little bit X-rated, but he's interacting with people, and he's literally just looking around, talking to people, trying to pick up on a vibe, and then playing that record. You know what I mean? And that's phenomenal talent in my mind if you can do that. Really,
that's why I like
those are really good times at parties and things. You know,
the Kink thing where he's got this controller Bluetooth thing, and he controls the drums by whacking it in the air. I don't know how it works technology-wise. It's magic, isn't it? And when he does that, and he's like, I watched him on Boiler Room, and people are like losing their mind because it's so interactive and it's so of the moment, and nothing's set in stone. It could go awfully wrong. And he's like, you know,
you just press stop and start again, don't you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's the thing. In your head, you're like, oh, because I remember when I started DJing, if you did a bad mix, people would be like, oof.
Definitely.
But it always dropped to bad, and Fred Astaire on a tin roof kind of thing. And now, to be honest, I've had vinyl records start skipping halfway through, and you've just got to grow a pair and pick the needle up and start it again. And nobody cares. They're all drunk anyway. And
I saw... Oh, no, I'm not going to tell that story.
Go on.
No. It was an Eric Murillo story. I don't know if he's X-rated now, is he? That all ended badly, didn't it? So
incredibly badly. I've seen people... Who was it? It was DJ Harvey, who I have nothing but respect for. So I got introduced to Harvey by Gibbo. He had a record label called it's called Black Something male chicken. I'll give you a clue. And it was an old record called Black Cockerel, yeah, abbreviated.
One syllable.
I'd give us a clue. He did a record and it was called something Frog, and it was like mental. And then I saw him DJing in Los Angeles because he's like a mega big deal, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he, at the end of the set, he kicks the decks over. I don't know if you've seen it, I
think I am.
You know, if I did it, I'd be getting chucked down the back stairs and getting a good hide in. This guy just seemed to go stratospheric for this, and it was just But again, it's just interaction, isn't it? But obviously, somebody had to replace that mix. I think he paid for the mixer himself, didn't he? Afterwards, but
he might have the means to do that.
I'm sure he has. He's massive, isn't he? But
I'd be heartbroken.
I don't know. It's just.
So where you're at musically, so like this is what I keep pulling you back to. So obviously, where I've seen is it's kind of rave elements of house music. There's obviously there's a big element
it's a
of funk
word
in
rave,
there.
though, isn't it? Yeah, I think
Not
it is
for me. So just to know, so you know where I'm at. Obviously, because I was so young, it was tapes. That was my affinity to.
Slater's got massive. Steve Slater's got big into tapes at the minute. If you follow him on Instagram,
Yeah,
I see
I
tapes
don't,
for
but
me. I don't.
I will.
My mate. So Dave, who used to DJ with, used to always buy second-hand cars, and they'd always come with a tape player, and he'd pull out the tapes and put them in, and it was just like all the music you loved covered with this noise over the top, and it was horrendous.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Some of the compression and the duplication was.
And then you were proper into it, and all of a sudden it just spaghetti out the front, and
or slow down.
and then speed up again.
Yeah.
It's rubbish. But yeah, I think musically I'm at a junction where I've got a chance to sort of reflect on what's been and what's come in and where I'm at in terms of age, and looking at. So there's a lot of like youthful stuff coming through in Newcastle especially, and I've been looking at Manchester quite a lot as well and thinking, what do I want to do? So I've been learning new production stuff, making some records. DJ wise, I'm just being selective with what I'm doing. I don't want to go too mad because I think the problem with DJing is it's on a night, anti-social hours, and if you do too much, it knocks you out in the day. So
you make a sacrifice for it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like I say, there was one point when I was DJing like an incredible amount. I was absolutely exhausted, So I'm going to make some records. I've got a gig coming up on the 27th with Craig Charles at the Empire.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
So that'll be ace. So I've never met Craig. I've been in front of him when he's DJing, and he's got this mad energy.
Yeah.
Like
he plays great music. Well, to be fair,
but he's really good on the microphone. And when we went on this gig to Amsterdam on this ship, and he was DJing, and the ladies idolise him. They're just like screaming at the front of this gig, and I'm just like, wow, this is mental.
Is that because of Red Dwarf, or is that?
Well, he's a celebrity, isn't he? Not just he was in Coronation Street. He's
Sorry,
a
I
big
forgot.
deal.
I didn't really watch. Coronation Street,
but he's actually. I just like him I think he's a cool person. And then I've got that Dylan Cartledge is playing from. I think he's from Redcar. The guy with the.
I don't know, Dylan.
Got a big huge afro, and he's really good. So I'm really looking forward to that. Okay. And then I'm on before and after Craig Charles.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to follow that out, but.
So when you go, obviously that sounds like a great gig. Good say. Empire, did you say?
27th, so it's 2 days before my birthday, which would be nice.
Amazing, yeah. So when you're approaching that now, I mean, I guess that's a pure kind of funk type of sound that you're looking at, is it?
Funky. So I'm kind of funk's a weird one. So if you just play funk, it's very obscure. If you go down that kind of rabbit hole, and then
you do.
And then you start playing like mad funk jams, and you realise the audience have gone.
Yeah.
So I think what I do is I go.
I know exactly what you mean there, by the way.
Digging on Bandcamp, which is that a real thing? I don't know.
I think a lot more people are doing it. I dip my toe in.
A lot of time.
I dip my toe in, but I don't use it.
So what I do is I find records, and then I'll try and keep stuff people have heard refreshed. So I play bits of edits and I play, I've these producers I go to I really like, and stuff like the Allergies who we played earlier I really like, and then think where I'm going to go with it. What's the crowd like? And then because you can now everyone's getting into disco up in Newcastle as well, so you can chuck in bits of disco with funk. Same thing. You can pull bits of like classics in, mad edits or whatever as well, and then just sort of go from there. But because I'm playing the end set, I think I need to get into. I want to get some. So I got really into the Reflex. The guy is he from Paris? I think.
Yeah, he's doing some good quality stuff, isn't he?
Yeah, so he remixes from the original stems.
Stems, yeah.
And I saw him at
Is he just using software for that, or does he have some like mad
he's
industry link?
Studio legend, I think. So,
because I noticed some software the other day that you basically put a track in and you say you want the vocals, and it just rips them out for you now.
I've
Whereas
got
before you had to
story.
work
I can't
really
tell
difficult.
It on air though for copyright issues, but I know somebody who got some absolute classic stems.
Yeah.
Off a Russian guy, but I think they just get them from.
I feel like it was in a suitcase,
off the dark web or something like that. But yeah, he's just an incredible producer, and he was like, I remember he did a remix of ABC by Jackson 5.
Yeah,
I'm sick to death of that record, but what he's done to it, he's like, wow. And
I liked his. He done a little take. He done like a hip house take on Delight Grooves in the Heart. You know, to just use the Q-tip and that. And but I was a little bit. One of the ones I was looking at that he'd done was Harold Melvin, Bad Luck, and I think that lost something, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
So.
I to be honest, I got a Tom Moulton mix of that, which was much better.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of, like I was finding, the problem is I don't want to get pulled down the disco rabbit hole, because it's, again, disco's got its own life, you know, and I know people who, and then it goes towards slow chuggy house, which I'm not really into.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, I don't mind listening to it. I just don't want to play it. But yeah, I just find it too. I'm playing slow chuggy house.
See, for me, it's like the old disco house, only slower for a 42-year-old man. See, I don't have to move as fast now.
You can't move
don't
as fast.
Don't have to get as intoxicated. So there you go.
Yeah. So anyway, I got. He did some remixes of like stuff you love, but you're sick of hearing. And then he gave him a new lease of life. But then everybody was playing the same records.
Yeah.
They'd just buy the revisions and then just kind of play everything.
Yeah.
And then I started looking around. And then, like I say, I had a break, which I'd advise it because it's a really good time to stop and have a think about. If you're playing every week, you start, without realising, playing a lot of the same stuff. Yeah. What works, what doesn't work. And it starts sounding a little bit similar. And by stopping, I'm like, I bought loads of new records, I found new producers, I've got into, you kind of, I think with Funkbox as well, you'd always think, what can I push the boundaries with and play? So we'd stop and play like Voodoo Ray or something, which had roots in electro anyway.
Yeah.
Or we'd play, something a bit more classic and well known, which might not have fitted into the genre, but it worked. And it's given us a good time to really stop and have a look at what I'm doing, and also have a look at other people, what they're doing, and what's working, what's exciting. Going to maybe I went to see Quantic at Wylam in Newcastle. Yeah. It kind of blew me away. Just one guy who's so insanely clever.
Yeah.
And he was just like, but yeah.
I was really, did he do an album? You'd have to forgive my ignorance here. Did he do an album was it Spanky Wilson?
Yeah.
Yeah,
don't joke with an hungry man. I think it is.
And I thought that was brilliant.
That was excellent.
I'll play a few of the bits of that, to be fair.
But yeah,
I thought that was Funkbox. Definitely. You could
smashy drums and kind of, I remember watching a documentary on funk, and the guy, I don't know whether it was James Brown or someone else, he said the thing with funk is it starts from 000 on the counter straight away. There's no messing about. You're straight in. And I think that's what we had with Funkbox, really. So.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. So, the impact is immediate.
If the band come on stage, they wouldn't play a few bars of mellow and then just drop in. It'd just be like, straight in.
Yeah,
and it was that's what I kind of liked about it. But then you had the opportunity, you could take it up and down with bits of hip-hop, which were all sampling funk records. Yeah. Some soul-y stuff, new stuff like, your Amy Winehouse bits and pieces. And then you'd got remixes of stuff as well. And then it was just sort of, you kind of like, I can go where I want with this, which is good. And
this was kind of the Funkbox mentality.
Yeah, the idea. So the Funkbox was a ghetto blaster, basically, and the idea was that it was like just an outlet for good music with like a bit of that hip hop mentality. So when hip hop started, you'd got like your graffiti, your breakdancing, all that kind of. We couldn't breakdance in Twisted Lip because people be having their eyes out and stuff like that. It was so small, but I know they used to have the breakdance on in Mink. And,
yes, yeah,
and Rouge actually.
That as well,
but they were really good. But again, it's just so compact in the Twisted Lip. But yeah, so I'm trying to think where we're at. lost my train of thought there.
It was so you were talking about the kind of approach to the sound for Funkbox and your DJing.
Yeah, so I'd like I say, I'm still doing Funkbox, but I've had a chance to stop and maybe. Because the thing with that kind of music, you don't need to be buying it every single week.
That's true.
You're not, like it's not been an upfront house DJ.
What's good about that as well is that sometimes if you haven't listened to a track for a while and you put it on again, you can really be excited by it again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I used to like, this is why I like going down a digital DJing route. And a lot of people, when you play funk records, that's when they start saying, this is not real. It's like, yeah, but the reality is, if I had to play these on vinyl, I probably wouldn't be able to afford it anyway.
No,
so
not now.
No. But so you can treat a digital DJ setup like a sampler. So you could extend things and loop things and do like mashups and be.
I was
really
intending
creative.
to do all sorts with this, and that's exactly what I've ended up doing. By the way, getting funk records and just getting all the little bits and just whacking the the triggers to.
Or putting it on an 8-bar loop and just legging it to the toilet.
Yeah,
Which is instead of putting long records on, but.
So obviously all those influences that you're talking about in production and in DJing, like kind of in an ideal world. So obviously that gig with Craig Charles it probably got a specific kind of thread to it, to be fair. But in an ideal world, if you were going to play, how just obviously music that you wanted to play, what does that look like now then? So. And are you just kind of open to everything that's influenced you? And are you just going to throw all that into production and DJing, or
no? I think things are compartmentalised. They're not like I'm playing with Craig Charles banging in some kind of Hackney rave record, kind of that's one thing, and then the Funkbox thing's another.
Yeah.
So the more electronic stuff's mainly production stuff, which isn't. I don't make funk records, and I can't play an instrument or anything anyway.
Well, you can sample breaks.
Yeah, but I think the problem with that is anyway. So basically, like I say with the funk stuff, it's kind of you're putting together you're trying to make people dance and have the time of their life, basically. That's it. It's Christmas. It's not going to be hard. It's 2 days after Christmas. People have been gasping
it's December.
Gasping to get out properly.
Yeah.
And I get to play in that DJ box in the Empire that I've never played in.
Yeah.
Always played second fiddle upstairs.
Oh no, well, I love the Royal Booth. I could never get past that.
What was that? The one on the ones. The little theatre booths at the top.
Yeah,
they were class, weren't they?
Amazing.
Yeah,
that was my favourite. It was just
such a nice venue as well.
It was just the positioning. Okie doke. So there was a few more things that I kind of, like I said, I didn't want it to be too much of a structured conversation. But any thoughts about the best gig you played?
Best gig I've played.
Or any memorable ones, good DJ memories.
I'm trying to think that.
You've got no good DJ memories.
No, we used to play. We used to have a night called. Well, I went to Amsterdam with my wife for an anniversary thing. We went to Rotterdam.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know much about Gabba, which is like the fastest form of music
ever.
Well,
I know what it is.
Oh, so they all have skinheads. It's a bit questionable.
Like what's it called? Straight edge, scene, isn't it? Like no intoxication.
It's like Turbo Makina, like super fast and a bit mental. And I come back and I thought, I'm going to do a parody of this called Blacklight Mega Rave. Yeah. And so me and Graham bought loads of black lights, UV lights. Yeah. And we had a shop where you could upgrade your level of UV by buying paints and high-vis vests and everything. And we used to play breaks and drum and bass. And there was one night where this guy scaled the pillar.
Where was this?
In the front of the corner house.
Okay.
And it was, so the only light source was the fire exit sign because we weren't allowed to turn them off.
Yeah.
And these people had daubed paint all over the face. And one lad scaled the column in the middle of the corner house. He was having the time of his life, but the bouncers couldn't get him down.
Oh dear.
And, but yeah, it was,
music off.
Yeah, but we used to bring people down for it, and it was really good. It's quite full on, but it was sort of it was a really good laugh.
Good times, eh?
Yeah.
And the Bobzilla, what we haven't really touched on, and we better do it before because we'll have to wrap up in at least within half an hour, is the other creative element. So for me, when I look at you from outside, what I see on social media, there is an element of music and DJing, and obviously my history with you is through music. But what I see on social media is photography. I see it's like your birds in pumps. I see your portraits. And so what's happening there at the moment then?
So that's kind of so. I do murals for a living, so I kind of like a certain type of mural, and that was getting because I'd put all my attention in that over lockdown.
Can I just ask, does that feel good? Because I feel like it's like you're putting a massive stamp like all over the place, like a creative stamp.
So I used to walk to work from Linthorpe to Central Middlesbrough, and it was at a time when Gresham was getting knocked to bits, and I was, and Baker Street was not started, and I thought, do you know what, I'm going to paint this town a different colour, because it's just for me, just to walk up the street and see something a bit more refreshing. And I think I painted a massive chicken on that near
it was a fence, wasn't it? Was
Sacred Heart Church.
Oh yeah, further down. Yeah.
And ironically, the police were chasing some joyriders and they went straight through it.
Oh yeah, I did notice it. Half of it had gone. Yeah.
Imagine the last thing you saw was a massive chicken in trailers.
What was left though? Was it the pumps? Or was it there was something left, wasn't there?
It was the site. It was the pumps, the trainers. Yeah, that was funny. That. But yeah, it started from Steve Barker, up at Copperhouse, had got a massive gable end and said, do you want to paint a mural on that? And I'm like, yeah. And I'll leave
Where's Copperhouse?
Right at the end of Baker Street, where Martin Fox works and everybody. Hello, Martin. Best haircut in town, by the way, Martin's as well, yeah.
Better than mine.
Yeah, I don't know what you're rocking at the minute. So Steve said to me, we were on boot camp together at the minute, and like me and him get proper like sweating out of breath at 6 o'clock in the morning. He said, do you want to paint this mural on the side of the building? It's a big terrace. And I'm like, yeah. And I'll leave everything till the last minute. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So I wanted to paint these birds. And I don't know why I put trainers on them. And it's just literally stuck. And so I have a shop where I sell prints on Etsy. And they go all over the place.
Go on then, give us a
like a domain.
Give it a promo. Yeah.
All right. So if you type in urbanbirds.co.uk, you can see the prints. But it's weird because I used to do workshops in school, and kids love them. But I'm the ones on Baker Street. I'm quite tired of because they're really old. Yeah. So I kind of want to paint. I want to paint something new. But anyway, so I was doing that, and then I started doing like pattern-based murals, which over lockdown everyone wanted the yard painting or the bar redoing up or whatever. Yeah. And it went quite well, because I know there's a lot of people who financially lockdown was difficult. Yeah, it went the opposite way because most people were stuck at home. Yeah, like things like they were investing in stuff for the house. They were they weren't booking holidays or buying cars. Yeah, they were investing in their space, so it went all right. And then I'm just, like I say, I just day to day, not day to day, but jobs murals, and then stuff like that as well. And then I've always been really creative, so I love photography. So I grew up, I used to photograph graffiti all the time. So I've had a few exhibitions of it and stuff, but I kind of used to, there's a train yard in Borough near what's the bridge called that goes, red and white one?
Albert Bridge, or
no, the massive
Newport Bridge.
There's a train goods yard there, and it used to be full of graffiti. And I used to travel around Europe just photographing graffiti and stuff like that. And then that's how I got into photography. And then I started liking like the underbelly of society. So not in a disrespectful way, but clubs are quite. Sometimes it depends where you are, but they can be quite seedy and dark.
Definitely, you definitely get that impression from some of the shots you see. I've never been to Berlin, but some of the shots you see from clubs in Berlin have definitely got that element of just like rough graffiti on the walls and kind of patchwork building underground.
I went to Berlin for my 10th anniversary, and I love the place, but it's the most liberal place I've ever been. Yeah. Like.
If it scares you, it's...
No, it's not. It's. I've got I can't tell it on air, actually. One of my mates went to a club in Berlin, and he said it was just like, do I just turn around and just leave?
Yeah,
He said it was mental. But like we went... I love Berlin because the attention to detail is phenomenal. And it's a city with potential, so it's not all super gentrified. Yeah. Whereas some, it's musically it's phenomenal as well. But it's sort of... But yeah, very techno as well. Everyone just seems to wear black and... dances to business techno, so sort of but yeah, anyway, so
we were onto the birds and the Etsy store.
Yeah, so So I got into photography. So I'd started photographing a lot of clubs. I was asking people going, "Oh, do you want to photograph this club, that club?" And what I liked about it, it was a slice of history never to be repeated or very rarely seen by general public. And people in those clubs, you know, some of them further than others didn't. It was like kind of inhibitions were lost, and you know, I wouldn't say debauchery, but these, you know, you've seen stuff in clubs that are like bloody hell, you know.
Yeah.
And to get to photograph it, so on the premise that when they come in that club, is almost like they're signing a waiver to be part of a documentation of it.
Yeah.
So I'd like I say, I found those 8 folders of Denny's stuff the other day, and the photos are class. That it's just a time capsule of a certain time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. But that's where the photography thing comes from.
So there's photography. What about the portraits? Are they popular? Or?
No, I'm not the best portrait painter, to be honest.
I know, but you have your style. Don't you know what I saw the other day? And this is a Borough thing, but I saw your rosemary topping. I love that.
That's why I did that. I knew that I'd sell in Borough.
Well,
I did an Adidas fantasy Adidas trainer that sold really well.
I think if Gary's still on, he got one.
Yeah, I can imagine he did. Yeah, that I knew what I would. So the thing I have a connection to, but I spent 20 years here.
Yeah,
and then I remember when I left, it was almost like people are like, "Oh, why are you leaving the Borough?" And then it's like, well, I'm not actually from Borough. I'm from Sheffield. And then I think some people are like, I know that. I'm like, because I was here, I think I was in Borough longer than I was anywhere else. So I'm married to someone from Borough, and I'm kind of, you know, the reason I left is because I wanted to kind of expand on what was happening. And I think you can only go so far in a smaller place.
Yeah,
really.
you definitely have to build anything you want to do. You've got to really put the time and effort into building up, and it's very, very difficult.
But musically, though, I was saying, I always find Borough's a good place for music.
Yeah.
Like, even against Newcastle. Like, sometimes Newcastle can be a bit too cool for school, or, you know, you get lost in it, or what, because some of the stuff's quite big, you know, whereas, I don't know, there was something special about Funkbox when people were, like, invested in it. You know, they were like, it was their Saturday night, 'cause it was every Saturday night.
Definitely.
And, but yeah, so it's sort of... But yeah, so that's. I'm just thinking if there's anything else you missed there. So there's painting. It's just generally creative stuff, because I like, if I couldn't hold down a normal job, like my brain's all
You
over
definitely
shit.
could.
What, like a desk job?
Well, I don't know.
You done them emails, Bob?
I think what most people do is they kind of use the break, or on a night time they organise just to kind of balance that out. But it's a difficult life with like some.
No,
sort
what I mean though is I couldn't do a normal job in the sense of like a consistent job.
You definitely could. But yeah.
But I like because I get kind of ideas and think, oh, I could try this, try that, and do that and stuff. And then just sort of luckily I can make money from the art side of things, which is because obviously you need to sustain yourself.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible. To be fair, it's a difficult.
It's been difficult. So anyone who wants to go into that, it's like. You've got to you'd need a job to get yourself up to a level.
I was going to say, I think there's a couple of elements, isn't there? Obviously, you've got to be of a level that people appreciate it and are happy to pay for. But there's also a level of skin in the game, you know what I mean? Like, you've got 20 years of being Bobzilla, people seeing your DJ sets, people seeing your club nights, people seeing your murals, people seeing what you've put, your photography online and things like that. So there's a lot of skin in the game there. So that's almost like, for me, there's a brand there that people, you know, if I was looking for something, I'd quite happily pay money to get it from that brand, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's strange. It's strange because if I was presented with, I don't know, your Amy Winehouse portrait, I might think it was good. I might think it's nice. But when you put that level of skin in the game and all that creativity and all your understanding of the brand behind it, it just seems so much more.
I think what I learned a bit back, which is a really important thing, was that all art forms, whatever they are like subjective. So, you know, you might love all this stuff. Your dad might think it's a load of rubbish. And everyone's entitled to that kind of opinion.
You can imagine what he thought of the rave tapes when I was at school.
Yeah. Oh, I've had some abuse off my mum.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell's this kind of stuff? But no, like, it's about finding your audience, and, you know, not everyone's your audience as well, and realising that, you know, some people aren't into certain things. Some people are purists, you know, and if they are, they're going to go and listen to vinyl DJs, but it's just sort of finding your kind of people you play to and stuff. like I say, it's subjective, whether that's a painting. They might think that Amy, like I've got a friend, Leanne, who's a phenomenal painter. Like she was on Sky Portrait Artist of the Year. I don't come anywhere close to that, but people really like that Amy Whitehouse picture. You know, like
Yeah, for sure.
Thinks it's pink. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Goes nice in people's houses. Who knows? But I started doing. What did I do? I did some tattooed ones where they were all tattooed and stuff.
Oh, you did.
David
Bowie. Yeah, saw that. Yeah.
The Green Woman. Do you remember that old kitsch painting that everyone used to have in their house in the 70s?
Oh, yeah.
And that went down quite well.
I'm not sure I've seen that one.
It's funny. It's in our house. Yeah. So just in terms of that, and then I'm kind of I'm trying to think where I'm at really.
Surfing.
Oh yeah, surfing. So surfing for me started as a mental health thing. So I had a cafe which was ace. I had it for 2 years, and we ended up going our separate ways for one reason or another. And after coming out of it, I was suffering from kind of, is suffering the word, isn't it? I had anxiety, so little things would become big things and stuff like that. So I thought I'm going to do surfing. I do that a lot where I'm going to do this. I'm going to buy a sampler. I'm going to try wallpapering. So I bought a surfboard off a girl in Redcar. So to travel from Newcastle, I got this board. It's the wrong board. It was too small for me. And I spent winter freezing my ass off in the North Sea, not knowing what I was doing. It's probably quite dangerous, but I've done it now for 3 years.
Where's the coast? Is Newcastle
Tynemouth. Long Sands.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Ironically, I never surfed at Saltburn after living here for 20 years, and it's phenomenal. It's sort of, but now I do sometimes.
Yeah.
But I started surfing, and I've met the most phenomenal community of people, like absolutely lush people.
Yeah.
And you know, so I'm actually got my Yonder top on. So
what's Yonder?
Yonder's it's
Surf
a
brand.
female surf school run by Sally and then her partner Tom. The only setback is I can't do anything or any lessons because I'm not female. So.
No. In this day and age.
Yeah, maybe we should. What's the correct terminology?
I'm a they.
I'm a they. I don't identify as male or female. Yeah. So there's a really nice community up there, and then you meet people will teach you bits and pieces.
Yeah.
You know, you end up with a bigger circle of friends, and they do feel like friends as well. And then. So I didn't realise Stevie Speakers surfs as well.
I didn't know that.
It's kind of good apparently. So,
Yeah.
but I've been
about Frammy?
The ledge.
Yeah, Ledge.
No, he's way out of my league.
Yeah.
I see him pictures of him flying on surfboards and things like that, and just like, nah, can't do it. There's a lot actually. So I think there'd be a lot who, from that Dusted era, because a lot came from Saltburn, didn't they, as well?
Yeah.
So, but I found the Dusted photos, Carl, if you're listening, that some of them are a bit cringy, mind. But there are a lot of air straighteners.
I'm cringing now.
I don't know how many you're on. There is a lot of photos, mind, but I wouldn't put them in a book. But yeah, they're sort of. There's a nice community, but it all adds together because it's all like a culture thing, music, surfing, whatever. And but yeah, I just started doing that to sort of improve my mental health, and it really works. So,
it worked, yeah?
Yeah, because you kind of. You leave like the land and then you get in the sea, and then when you're in the sea it's like having a wide angle lens because there's nothing around you apart from water on a flat.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're in, there might be houses, whatever,
Yeah.
and you just feel kind of, it's kind of when it's calm anyway, and then it's just sort of the process of kind of getting out, getting dry and whatever, and just need to ease off the chip butties afterwards, or I'll end up like massive.
I don't know.
Bit of energy. Yeah. No, but it's good. It's good. So I've been doing that, and then I've kind of started getting loads of friends into it as well. So like we had a group at one point which was about 8 or 9 people, and then some turn up, some don't. And
Something that I read about, that social contagion. So if you're sharing something that you're doing that's quite interesting, and you'll find that it does have an influence on the people around you.
Well, I think DJing's a prime example of that. Like when I started, there was like people, they were playing mainly like Fantasia style house music at the time, and I'm like, oh, what's this all about? And then I started watching hip hop videos, and they were doing the same thing with different music. I thought, oh, I'll have a go. And then like you've got mates who'll teach you a few bits, or might lend you some decks or whatever,
even some records.
Yeah, and then you go to a record shop, and I remember it'd be like I'd bump into people in Fernley's, and they go, oh, you coming to this? Or you go to it was True Temper and Lackey, you go, oh, this is somebody else, and blah blah. Like, or I remember you'd go to the corner house, and there was like there were like blocks of people, and you'd get introduced from block to block, and then it all started melding together, and you were kind of, I remember, when was it? What night was it? Maybe it was early Thursdays at the Corner House, and you'd walk in, and it was like Happy Days, where people clap when Fonzie comes on and stuff like that. You knew it was specifically Peter May when the music had stopped, and he'd walk in, or somebody else would walk in. It was like people, because it's a really small town when you look back a bit as well.
Yeah,
it's not like I think even Newcastle's a really small city. It didn't take long to walk across it, and I think you start to know people really quickly.
Yeah.
And you're all in the same thing together.
Yeah.
There might be little rivalries or whatever.
Or like a big campsite.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, it's sort of. But it's been good. I know a lot of people from it, and I kind of, like I say, I sort of. But I always have. I don't know, like a little bit on the peripheries because I play weird music. So it would have been, because at the time a lot of people, especially the ones who are doing really well, were playing house music.
Yeah.
And it does seem like a clear progression with house music. And I suppose now it's a lot of techno's turning like that, isn't it?
Especially the kind of melodic end of it.
Yeah, well, it's become kind of the moment, hasn't it, I suppose, and stuff like that. So, it's been good. So.
Cool. Shall we play another record? I've got a few that I want to play, with a few little memories as well, and then we'll probably call it a day.
I'm intrigued to see what these are. So you do those.
They're just random moments, but that's how I like it, But I'll have to plug my USB stick in. So you play one more, and then I'll plug mine.
If anyone who develops DJ equipment, that's one of the big, when you used to have to switch decks halfway through.
Yeah.
It'd be an uncomfortable pause.
Well, we're going to do that live on Facebook. Yeah. So you're going to drop one more, and I'll have to. I'm getting old, so those cups of tea are making me. I'm going to have to go for a comfort break again. I'm going to play this. So, track 2.